Hello, my name's Gill and I've been asked to show you how to make a ribbon bow wreath like the one that's hanging just here. So what you need as the frame is to have a 40cm or 16-inch flat copper wreath ring, and you'll need to obviously have your ribbon. And really, because you're wanting to put this design outdoors, you're far better off to use the polypropylene ribbon that comes in 91 metre reels. And to start with, what you'll need to do is to measure a length that is 50 centimetres long, and then just cut it. And because it's a splitting ribbon, you just need to tear it down into 4 lengths. And what you'll need to do is to then take another piece of the ribbon, and this time measure it to 60 centimetres, which is round about 2 foot long. So you're going to end up making really the means by which you're going to hang this particular item. So I'm just going to put the ribbon so it goes around the actual wreath ring itself, and then just make a wreath knot. So don't worry that the ribbon looks a bit messy and untidy. It really doesn't matter. What you do need to do is to test it to make sure that it really does hold into position. Get the knot so it's on the upper surface of the flat wreath ring, and then with a little piece of the ripped 50 centimetre ribbon, all you're going to do is then to tie that firstly above the actual wreath ring. So I'm just going to do just a simple knot, then slide it down, and you'll notice that I'm putting the handle so it's near one of the inner spokes of the actual wreath ring, just so that there's a means of tying it nicely. Tie it again, and then just put the ribbon around the spoke and then just tie. And that does mean then that the actual means of hanging the wreath won't then slip around. Do a couple of knots and then cut the excess ribbon down, but do have round about 5 centimetres so that you can actually then manipulate it. And then I'm just going to cut some of the excess off the larger piece of loop, so again we have a smaller amount of ribbon. Now obviously, if you're going to hang this up against a wall, then you really don't need to do this next little exercise, because the wall obviously doesn't really need protecting. But if you're going to hang it against a door, or you're going to hang it where you're going to see the back, then you will need to actually protect your door, and you'll need to do that really by binding the ribbon so that it then holds into position and covers really the whole of the ring. So what I'm going to do to start with is just cast on. So I'm just going to knot, pull it nice and tightly, and then knot again just to hold it into position. And then I'm just going to bind. So I'm just going to roll this back up just so that it doesn't get so twisted to start with. And what I'm wanting to do is to have it so that I can then go over. So let's just get this to go over like so. Pull it nice and tight. Try to get it nice and flat. So I'm just easing out the polypropylene ribbon. And what I'm trying to do to start with is to get it so that it goes over the knot and starts to disguise it, and the excess ribbon is then just being held into position, so it's then sandwiched in with the actual ribbon that you're then binding around. And you will find that it gets quite twisted, but what you'll need to do is just to persevere and just try to get this to go flat. So you're binding it so that it goes at a slight diagonal angle each time, so that it covers the salvage of the bind before, and you'll find that you'll just carry on going all the way around until you get right back to where you started. Now when you get to the top part where you have the loop, then I would suggest that you then cut off the ribbon sufficient to know that you can then get it to go all the way round still. So I'm just going to really try to catch hold of any of those excess little pieces of ribbon that I used to really just secure the means of securing the wreath to the door or the wall, like so. And then I'm just doing gentle tugs just to make sure that it's nice and neat. So I'll get as far as having round about 20 centimetres left. I'm then going to rip down the ribbon, and then I can then tie it to hold it into position. And again, what I'm wanting to do really is to get the knot to be nice and secure. So I'm pulling it really tightly, keeping my thumb near where the knot is, and then do another knot, and then just pull. And that way we've actually then tied off the ribbon, and I'm just going to cut down the excess, still having just round about 4 centimetres, really just to help to hold it into position. So I've now covered the entire flat 40 centimetre copper wreath ring with the blue polypropylene ribbon. So I'm going to put that to one side for a moment, because then I need to start to make the bows. And for a 40 centimetre copper wreath ring, you need to actually create loops to make the bows, which are half the actual diameter of the wreath ring. So if the wreath is 40 centimetres, that means that we need to make the loops to make the bows at 20 centimetres. And it's far easier if you actually find a book that is round about that size. And luckily for me, my books that I write are 20 centimetres long. And so what I'm going to do is have ready a piece of the 50 centimetre ripped down ribbon, because that will be the centre of the bow. And I'm just going to neaten off that edge just slightly at a diagonal angle. And then I'm just going to hold the ribbon so that it's up against the top of the book, and then just slightly loosely, if that makes sense, just go around the book. And what you're needing to do is to make sure that you have six lengths of ribbon going down each side, so that you're just going to, I've got 5 here, so I'm just binding it. I'm actually binding it round the book so I can see each of the pieces of ribbon themselves, so that I can then quite easily count to see how many lengths I've got. So once I get to 6, hold it so that it doesn't slip off, and all I'm going to do is to cut the ribbon at a diagonal angle so that it's a nice neat edge. And then what I want to do is to then just slide off the ribbon that I've made into loops, which is why it's easier to use a soft back book. Try to make sure that you hold it so that the loops don't start to unravel. And what you're trying to do to make sure is that the point of where you cut the diagonal is at the edge of one of the loops. Then you're going to fold the loops in half, and what you're wanting to do is to not obviously crease the loops themselves. Turn it so that you have that folded edge facing the ceiling, and then what you're going to do is then just cut the corners off, but make sure that you do have round about a centimetre of the ribbon left in the middle, so that when you carefully unfold it so that you have that lovely triangle that's cut out either side, that you can see that you have your centimetre worth of ribbon in the middle here. And then you take your 50 centimetre length, try to get the ribbon so that it is even, and what you're going to do to start with is to bind it all the way round, and then pull it nice and tightly. So you're pulling it nice and tight like so, and then do another knot, and you can see that the 1 centimetre in the middle has now become gathered. And then you're just going to twist and pull out the bow. Now, because this is a very thin polypropylene ribbon, you have got to be exceedingly careful that you don't crease the lovely ends of the loops. So you may have to gingerly just open this out, but you can see how I'm just pulling the actual loops, opening them up from side to side. I then get the ends of the ribbon that secured the bow into position, and I want those to be really underneath, and then you have got a lovely loopy bow that obviously you could use for presents, etc., or decorating trees, but for this case it's to make the looped wreath. So I'm just going to show you again, and this time I'm using another polypropylene ribbon, but this one has actually is covered over with a lovely glossy look, slightly thinner, and I chose to use this particular turquoise colour because as I was watching TV and listening to the news, and obviously we had the films of all the NHS staff were wearing their scrubs, I realised that they wore turquoise too, and as I have this gorgeous turquoise ribbon, I thought I would use this to have a little bit more interest. So what I'm doing each time is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's just go so that we make sure that we have 6 of the ribbons either side. Hold on to the book, cut the actual ribbon at a diagonal angle, and then get hold of the loops on one side, as it were. Let's just make sure that we've caught hold of all of those so that I can then just gingerly just slide this off. And that's why you do need to make sure that you don't pull the ribbon too tightly, because you'd never be able to actually then slide it off the book itself. I've kept hold of the ribbon as much as I can to make sure that I still have really all the loops now are put together. And what I'm wanting to do then is again fold it in half without creasing these loops, and then turn it upside down so that we've got that lovely straight edge. And again, I'm just going to cut off the corners, but I've got to make sure that because this ribbon is thinner, the corners aren't being cut off so greatly, so that when I open it up, I have that 1 centimetre thickness. I then take a piece of my 50 centimetre ribbon. It doesn't matter that it's a different colour. All we're wanting to do really is to be able to bind it around, and then we can then just tie like so, and you're pulling it nice and tight. If you pull it too tightly, you may find that the ribbon will break, so that you do make sure that it's nicely concertinaed in at the middle. Tie again so that it's nice and secure, and then all you're going to do is then to just pull out the ribbon so that you end up getting this lovely loopy bow. And you can see that I'm just twisting it from one side to the other, and I'm just trying to separate the loops really so that they actually splay away from the centre, so that we get each of the loops in turn, and then just get the ends of the ribbon that you actually knotted it to be underneath, and that way we have got our bows. So for a 40 centimetre wreath ring, you do actually need to make 18 bows in total, and as I'm going to have it in 2 colours, it really does mean that I need to have 9 of one colour and 9 of another, and then all I need to do really is to just prepare all my bows. And you will find that you will use, for one of the ribbon colours, round about 30 metres of ribbon, and for the other colour you'll use round about 25 metres. So do consider the quantity of the ribbon that you need before you start to make it, or just use various colours of blue, because the idea really is, in my mind, is that this particular wreath is going to then be a welcome wreath that I'm going to then hang on my wall outside, and it's really to help to say, in my mind, thank you to the NHS for doing all the work that they are currently doing during these COVID times. So now I've prepared the 18 bows, and so I need to take the wreath ring, and then I need to then start to attach the bows to the ring. So to start with, I'm going to make sure that I secure one which is right where I knotted the ribbon when I was covering the actual wreath ring itself. So I make sure that that one sits right on top, and then what I'm going to do is to cross over at the back the ribbon ends that hold the bow into position, and then lead the bow ends up and tie nice and tightly, gentle tug just to help to cut it in. 1 knot and then 2 knots, and then you can just then fluff it out. What you're trying to do is to make sure, especially with the softer ribbon, that you don't then end up scoring or folding the actual loops. So once you've done the blue one, then obviously I'm going to use the turquoise one and push that so that it goes up against the blue ribbon, cross over the ends of the means by which I secured the bow into position, lead it up, so you may need to sort of move the loops so that they do sit nicely, and then just knot, and then when you're happy with the securing, then you just knot again. And I'm not cutting any of the excess ribbon off at the moment. What I'm just going to do is just fluff this bow open again so it looks much neater. At the back, you'll just see the actual ribbon that is then just going around the actual flat wreath itself. And so all I'm going to do is to repeat the process by just securing each of the bows in turn onto the flat covered 40cm copper wreath ring. So as you can see, I've gone half the way round with the 9 bows, and then I'm just going to repeat the process by tying the remainder 9 on in close order to actually then start to finish the design. So I've now attached all the bows to the 40cm ring, and as you can see, there's some excess ribbon from where I've been tying it on, which I then need to remove. What I'm going to do is then cut the ribbon, and I'm going to cut each of these little excess ribbons that I can see so that the ribbon itself is being cut at a diagonal angle, So in truth it becomes part of the overall design as it's the same colours. So I'm just going to check and have a look and see how many little excess pieces of ribbon I do need to remove. So you're just sort of studying it as you cut. I'm just going to rotate it round just to see whether or not any other naughty little pieces are just showing. There's just a few more that I can see. And so because even though that they're thinner, I don't really think that they detract from the loops. And what I'm also doing is having a look at the wreath itself to see whether or not there are any loops that do appear to be a little bit unfluffed, as it were. So I'm just checking those. Oh, you can just see a little piece of ribbon just there that needs to be removed. And yes, there's one little piece just there. There we go, just being perfectionist. So there's the loop for actually attaching it. And this is our welcome door wreath as a thank you to the NHS for doing all the hard work that they're doing at this particular time. And if you want to add just a little bit more decoration to your wreath, then obviously you can add some lovely trailing ribbons down. And obviously the NHS are stars, aren't they? And so I thought I'd add this little star in the centre of this particular ribbon wreath that I'm wanting to say thank you. And thank you very much for watching.